Hi, I'm Mark Bernard, and I'm here with the Bernard Institute for Cybersecurity Excellence. And this is lesson 2 of the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Identify is the module, and the lesson is on business environment, or ID.BE. Again, I use the reference model to simplify the view of the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. And I hope that you appreciate the simplicity of this. However, it is 108 control points, and it is a fairly high level of maturity within the organization required in order to adopt this framework. Again, today we're looking at the business environment. I want to take you through this lesson from the point of where you know little or nothing about the business environment lesson within the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. It's the first time you've heard of this, perhaps. Never heard of it before. So by the time you're done with this lesson, you'll have a good handle on what business environment means in the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Not only will you know what it means, but you'll be able to understand it and how it applies. If you follow along with all 23 lessons, by the time you get to the end, you'll know the complete framework. And hopefully, you'll be able to use this knowledge to gain a new opportunity, a new job perhaps, or maybe an increase in responsibilities in your current role. This should help you to gain that knowledge that you need in order to improve your career. As you use the framework more, you'll be able to fix problems associated with it. And you'll be able to verify and validate the subject matter has been used correctly. So this is the audit. So troubleshooting, audit. And then finally, after you work for a few years, you'll be able to do architecture work. You'll be able to take the NIST Cybersecurity Framework and apply it within the business or the organization that you work in and make it work. There are several goals within each of the lessons. In the business environment, we have these goals. BE1, the organization role in the supply chain is identified and communicated. Supply chain is an important theme. It's been increasing in importance over the last 5 years as we realize that even though we have a secure organization, we're still vulnerable from our supply chain. So supply chain is an important area to address. And the NIST Cybersecurity Framework spends a lot of time in looking at the supply chain and how we can mitigate risk around it. BE2, the organization's place in the critical infrastructure and their industry ecosystem is identified and communicated. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this goal, about understanding where it is that your business fits within the organization. Do you provide raw materials? Do you provide components? Do you provide a finished product that you sell, or perhaps a finished service that you sell? BE3, priorities for the organizational mission, objectives, and activities are established and communicated. This is an important part of the communication process. And in order to understand the mission, objectives, and activities, you need to know these things in order to be able to use them to create a business plan. And that's the ideal goal here, is to create a business plan, be able to map the strategic goals and objectives of the organization, whether it's in government or in the commercial sector, to the activities that you're conducting so that you can get annual budgets renewed and updated. BE4, dependencies within the critical functions for delivery of critical services are established. So understanding what is the critical path to get the raw materials and then finished product in the end. BE5, resilience requirements to support delivery of critical systems and services are established. Now I've created a few questions to correspond with those goals to help make the transfer of knowledge a little bit easier. So the first question is, what is your organization's role in the supply chain? What is critical infrastructure? Very good question. A lot of people don't understand this one. Do you have a defined mission, objective, or activities? More likely, does your organization? What are your dependencies and critical functions within your organization? And what steps have you taken to build resilience into your services? Let's start with the first question. Where does your organization sit in the supply chain? Well, there are basically 5 roles in every supply chain. So there's the group that collects the raw materials. If you're building, let's say, components for a rocket ship or a space station, then you may be the organization that grabs the minerals and refines the minerals to a point where they have the highest quality and they can be used for space design and development. Or perhaps the raw materials are the people, and you need to train people and get them organized and teach them the ways of your organization in order to be able to use them. Raw materials can come in many different shapes and forms. And then there's the manufacturing of those raw materials, so putting them together and building something. And then, of course, warehousing it. And then while it's warehoused, it will be sold. So supply and demand. So we build products, we put them in the warehouse based on some sales forecasts, and then the sales team goes to work and sells those products. Ideally, they're sold before they're manufactured, but it's not always the case. So sometimes they do go into the warehouse for sales afterwards. And then, of course, distribution and transportation. So the logistics of the supply chain, how the services get delivered, where the products get delivered, how they get delivered. There's a number of different questions that need to be asked. Supply chain is a complicated area, but it's closely integrated into your organization. And later on, when we talk about risk assessments, we'll talk about the risk universe and how supply chain plays a role in that. What products or services does your company sell to the other organizations? So do you gather things from one organization, build something, and then provide it to another? Where do you fit in that supply chain? Ask what suppliers or vendors does your company need in order to provide its services or parts or the products that it provides. Again, we have the raw materials part of the process, the manufacturing, warehousing, sales, and distribution. There's a number of different channels from a logistics perspective that could be used. You could have raw materials shipped by train to the manufacturing location. And once the manufacturing location is done with the components, they might use trucks to haul it to a warehouse. And then perhaps you build components offshore. You build them in a different country, or you have them brought in from a different country. Then you would probably use shipping containers. And then finally, the distribution of those products once they're here on the mainland. How do you get them to where they need to belong? And you might use UPS or FedEx or some organization like that to deliver them. Raw materials can be used to manufacture, and manufacturing leads to warehousing, and then sales, and then finally distribution. Question 1, continue. Where does your organization sit in the supply chain? Check with the legal team or the procurement team. Check contract management or the business continuity plan. All of these areas may have some clues. If it's not already known, you may be able to get a list of suppliers, for instance, from contract management or procurement team. Maybe the legal team also has a list. Somewhere, somebody has a list of all the suppliers, and you need that list in order to get started on this. Do you already know if your organization is part of the critical infrastructure? Well, do you? Has someone already communicated your organization's role? So has the CEO told the employees of the organization, we are a manufacturer, we are a supplier, here's our role, this is our mission, and this is what we do, right? So has somebody done that? Probably. But if not, you should ask, and ask to get a copy of that information. Once you know the organization's role, what the organization's role is, the CEO should remind employees of the role. Additional risk assessments and business impact assessments may be needed to flesh out the dependencies and the risks involved. A roadmap of the continual improvements to establish resilience is needed. Question number 2, what is critical infrastructure? Critical infrastructure is a phrase used by governments to describe assets that are essential for the functioning of society and economy. Which of the following 16 critical industries does your organization operate in? So we know that there's 16 different types of industries in critical infrastructure. Is your organization part of a chemical manufacturing process or services? How about commercial facilities, communications, critical manufacturing? How about dams? What about the defense industry base? How about emergency services or energy? What about financial services, food or agriculture, government facilities, healthcare and public health? How about information technology? What about nuclear reactors, materials and wastes? What about transportation systems? How about water and wastewater systems? So those are the 16. Somewhere your organization falls into one of those. Question number 3. Do you have a defined mission, objectives, and activities? Again, it's more like, does your organization have a mission, objectives, and activities defined? They should have. Should be in the strategic plan. Mission statement defines why the organization exists. As I mentioned before, in the mission statement, the CEO or the president may come out and say, we are company X and we're in business to build Y. And Y is used for government or for commercial sector in order to do their job or provide their services. A goal can be defined as a target that the organization is planning on reaching. So goals and objectives are slightly different. A goal is a target. It's a bullseye. It's like we talked about the goals for each of these lessons. Whereas an objective is a goal plus a strategy on how to reach the goal. Objective can be defined as the actions that lead successfully to achieving the goal. Critical success factors are conditions that need to be in place to be successful. So when we say that we're going to be delivering X product, we need to also say that in order to do that, we need to have resources, we need to have financing, we need to have management support, we need to have logistics and distribution, we need to have sales, we need to have raw materials. So there's a number of critical success factors that may have to be in place in order to achieve that goal. And it's important that you document them, because if you don't document them and you fail to reach the goal, then people will ask why. And then you need to backtrack and explain why. But if you have the CSFs defined and signed off by management, then they all know what you need to be successful. How about key performance indicators? Key performance indicators tell us if our projects are aligned with the mission and goals. So these are opportunities for us to check the course of our ship as we're sailing across the ocean from North America to Europe. And if our ship is starting to veer to the south or to the north, then we know that we have to make a course correction. And that's what KPIs do, key performance indicators. You have to be careful how you select them, because they have to be able to detect when your project or your mission is going off stray from the goal. Yeah, because when it does, then you need to make a change in direction and bring it back in alignment. Here's a simple illustration of the governance workflow from strategic to tactical planning. So you have a mission with goals, usually more than one goal. 3 to 5 is kind of the rule. You don't want to have too many goals. You don't want to have too few. So 3 is the minimum, 5 is the maximum usually. Critical success factors, you can have as many as you need. 5 is a lot actually. And then the KPIs. So the key performance indicators help to keep the project online. And again, performance indicators, you can have as many as you need. There should be performance indicators for important critical parts of your project so that you know, for instance, KPI could be resource planning or resource management, right? You need to have resources in place, but if the resourcing hiring process or training process doesn't go as planned, then you need to identify that that's a problem and you need to do something, take some kind of course correction to get that back on track. And then, of course, these all lead to projects. And project ABC will help deliver on the business goals for the year. Usually this is the tactical side of the process. KPIs and projects are on the tactical side. We do these on an annual basis. Question number 3, do you have a defined mission, objectives, and activities? Using a project management methodology will increase your chances of success. It's been proven before that a lot of organizations waste a lot of capital and time and resource because they haven't had a good way of organizing their initiative. So certainly the project management methodology, initiate, plan, execute, control, and close is a good process to follow if you want to try and achieve a goal. Most organizations have a strategic 3 to 5 year business plan. So usually the 5-year strategic plan is on the horizon. Where do we want to be in 5 years? And then it's broken down into tactical plans. And the tactical plans are 1-year increments that say, here's what we're going to do this year in order to move toward that strategic goal that's on the horizon. Organizational strategic plans are broken down into 1-year tactical plans, as I mentioned. Each department writes their own plans, projects. So within an organization, you have the chief executive officer at the top, and then you have the executive team. Each of the executive members on the team usually have a portfolio. It's kind of like a silo shape, and the portfolio are the services or products that they provide as part of the overall organization. Now, one executive probably doesn't have all of the portfolios, but they're broken up into different senior manager streams so that they can deal with the issues, the resourcing, and the capital and the budgets at a more micro level or macro level in order to make sure that they're successful. 8 key components to every business plan are mission, strategic plans, tactical plans, goals, objectives, critical success factors, key performance indicators, and projects. Question number 4. What are your dependencies and critical functions? Does your company need raw materials, finished products, high technology, specialized skilled or labor to build its products or deliver its services? Check with your legal team, procurement contract team, or business continuity plan to see who the suppliers are and what they provide. This will give you some more insight into what it is that you do. You may also want to talk to other senior managers in the organization to find out what it is that we do and how we do it. Again, raw materials, manufacturing, warehousing, sales and distribution are the key parts. Then we have logistics providers, and then we have the different modules. And sometimes you can produce raw materials for one of your products, but it's also used for a secondary product. So it's an interesting approach. Certainly sales as well. You can have multiple streams. Any of these processes can have multiple streams, inbound and outbound, in order to get to the goals and the mission of the organization. Question number 4. What are your dependencies and critical functions? Conduct a critical path assessment, CPA, to identify dependencies. So critical path analysis is important, analytical process that you can walk through when you can map out all the different departments in the organization, map out what each department does. Some provide support, some provide services, some provide the knowledge and the skills in order to build a product or a service and deliver it. So you need to go through your organization and do a critical path assessment or analysis if it hasn't already been done. A lot of quality management teams do this in order to try and identify where the opportunities are for improvement within the organization. So if you have a quality management team, you might want to ask them. They might have already done this. Conduct a business impact assessment. So business impact assessments are important because we want to identify what are the critical assets and services that we provide in order to achieve our mission. Create a succession plan to identify employees and their backups who are critical to deliver the organization's services and products. Succession planning is very important because obviously we hire a lot of people. We have senior managers who bring high level, deep skill sets and experience, and then we have lower level managers who maybe have less experience, but they might be lined up to become the next senior manager. And if they are, then they're on some kind of corporate development plan with the organization. So if you're not sure about succession planning, you can talk to human resources, see what they've done, because generally that's something that they would do. Rank your suppliers using a risk assessment to calculate a risk rating so that you can prioritize the company's dependency on your suppliers and vendors. So this might have already been done as part of the disaster recovery or business continuity process, but you want to find out which suppliers are more important to your organization. And when you do a critical path analysis, you might find out that raw materials 1 is critical for our mission, but raw materials 2 is not. You might also find that the manufacturers in block 1 are more critical. Maybe it's because of their specialized knowledge or skills in developing the product or services that you provide. And then you might also find out that specific warehouses that you have where you maintain information are your central markets. These are the places where maybe you sell the most of your product or services. So maybe one location is more critical than the others. And the same goes for sales. Maybe you have a sales team associated with that region or that area, and they're more critical to ensure that the revenue is generated for your organization, because revenue is important. It pays for the bills, it pays for the salaries, it pays for everything that you do, plus the shareholders need to collect their dividends. And then finally, the distribution channel. You may have a critical distribution channel that's important to the organization. So D2 might be the important one. Maybe D1 is not so important. And so as you go through the process, you want to do this critical path analysis and identify what's important. And then obviously they get more attention than the other ones. Question 5. What steps have you taken to build resilience into your services? Have you conducted a risk assessment to identify and rank risks? This is an important step. Have you conducted the critical path analysis and identified all the critical points of failure? Have you made any recommendations? And some of those recommendations might include build a high availability network to make sure that your services can be delivered even when a part of your network or a component fails. You might want to use cloud computing because it helps to drive down the costs of the operation, but also gives you some more resilience in the organization, because if you have a data center that goes down and you can't recover it, then you're out of business. But if you have a cloud and your data is backed up to the cloud and you have a facility that goes down, then you just switch to a different facility. So it's like building redundancy into your logistics and your manufacturing process. And speaking of redundancy, having redundant systems. So if you identify that a particular warehousing system or an enterprise resource planning system, or maybe your general ledger and your payments processing system are critical, then you might want to build some redundancy into the system. So making sure it's backed up, transactions are covered, etc. We talked about succession planning. Check with human resources. Make sure that they know who the number 1 person is, but maybe they also know who the number 2 and the number 3 person are. And if you're in a very formal, well-organized business, they may be training those people to fill in those roles. So there may be some shadowing going on or some sharing of knowledge between the leader and those people. Maybe the leader is mentoring those people. There could be a number of things going on, but you want to find out. And speaking of mentoring, knowledge management. So making sure that the knowledge is captured and shared to the appropriate people. Updating supplier agreements to making sure that they can address risk. Because a lot of times in the event of a disaster, a lot of suppliers have agreements, special agreements with some of their customers that say that you're going to be number 1 on our list. So as soon as the disaster happens, if you need a new server or if you need a new way of shipping things, in our agreement we've signed with you, it says that you will be number 1 on our list and that we'll make sure that you get taken care of first. If you haven't built that into your agreement, then you're going to be left waiting until they can get to you. So you might be on your own. So you want to make sure that you update the supplier agreements, and it includes those types of things. Automating infrastructure vulnerability monitoring and patching. Obviously, patching of systems. We've had many breaches reported in the media. A lot of them are because of known vulnerabilities that weren't patched. You look at the Equifax breach, cost Equifax so far over $700 million to fix. So not only is it important to you continuing to do business, but it's also important to your revenue stream because you may take a big hit. This is an unplanned expense. It probably exceeds any type of insurance that's out there. So you're going to be paying out of your treasury, which is not good for the organization. Defenses, again, ransomware attacks, against ransomware attacks. So ransomware is one of the most popular ways to extort money from organizations these days. And usually ransomware attack occurs because someone has not patched a vulnerability. There's a number of other things about ransomware attacks that you need to be aware of. You need to be able to have the ability to change your privileged user accounts in a flash, because if a Trojan has been installed on your system and somebody's going through your system encrypting the databases, they're probably using your privileged user accounts, and you want to be able to change the passwords and stop it. The other thing that you want to do is, because ransomware is more sophisticated these days, is you want to be able to take your online backup system and take it offline, because the newer, more sophisticated ransomware attacks not only drops a Trojan on your systems, but it also drops a Trojan in your backups. So you can never get away from them. You can't just simply wipe and restore your old data at some point in time. Denial of service attacks, although a little bit less of an issue than ransomware attacks. Certainly they can happen, but they can be easily fixed with reverse proxy or natting or something of that nature, where you can deflect the denial of service attack away from your IP block. Outsourcing monitoring. So you want to make sure that you have regular meetings with your vendors and your suppliers, and they know what the standards are that they're supposed to be following. These are the types of things, these are just a few suggestions, right, into building more resilience into your organization. Now we have some practices. As I mentioned before, unless we're doing a seminar or a workshop, these practices are up to you to do. If you want to contact us at the Bedard Institute for Cybersecurity Excellence, we'd be happy to help you. If you need help with explaining how these practices are to be done. Create a workflow of your product development or service delivery process. That would be useful. Distinguish between must-have and nice-to-have processes. So identifying your critical path. Conduct a risk assessment. Risk management is the backbone of the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. All of the processes point to risk management. You have to adopt a risk kind of based thinking culture, which for some organizations is part of a digital transformation because they have never done that before. So it's going to be a brand new kind of way of thinking. It might take time. But once people start thinking of things in terms of risk to the organization, the response is much, much improved. Conduct risk assessments. Draft corrective actions step by step to close these gaps that you find. Make recommendations to senior management for approval. Okay, let's do a little check to see what you remembered from this lesson. Okay, name 5 roles that are played in the supply chain. If you selected manufacturer, you're correct. And somebody who provides raw materials. So you might not be making a product from purchased materials from other manufacturers, but you might be making it from iron ore or copper or gold. So you need the raw materials in order to make your product. Transportation is an important part, and distribution. What else is? There's 4 left. Customer support, payroll, warehousing, or sales. If you guess warehousing, you're correct, because once your products are manufactured, you need someplace secure to store them. And sales, of course, equally important, because once you make your products, you want to be able to sell them so you can collect revenue. Test number 2. What is critical infrastructure? Is it a pizza delivery? Is it a financial institution? If you guess financial institutions, you're correct. Is it a hospital? Yes, indeed. We have to be able to take care of people, especially during disasters. When things are falling apart, we need to be able to provide healthcare service. Are they bus drivers? Retail shops? Airports? Car sales? All business is essential for society and economy. So we've seen before airports get shut down completely, and that might be the one that people ask the most questions about. But airports have been shut down during crises, and the country continues to run. So they're not technically part of critical infrastructure. Test number 3. What are 8 components to every successful business plan? If you said objectives, you're right. If you said strategic plans, you're also correct. Tactical plans? Yes, exactly. Goal setting? Key performance indicators? Yes. How about stock prices? No. Mission? Yes. How about critical success factors? Yes. What about project plans? Yes. Is cloud computing one of the 8 components? No, we already have 8. So, test number 4. What are 3 techniques you can use to identify dependencies and critical functions? Well, you could do critical path analysis. How about a compliance assessment? No. Privacy impact assessment? No. Succession planning will help you to identify important dependencies. How about systems development lifecycle? No. Penetration testing? No. A business impact assessment will help you identify critical dependencies. How about the annual board of directors report? No. Okay, question number 5. What techniques can you use to build resilient services? Can you conduct a risk assessment? Yes, that helps. Use standalone systems? No. Store data in Excel? No. That's a bad thing. Do not patch vulnerabilities? No. Authorize SDLC? No. Do not test changes to production? That doesn't help. How about conduct critical path analysis? Yes, that helps. Ban cloud computing? Never. Okay. And here's our progress chart. So we finished lesson 1 already on asset management. And now lesson 2 on the business environment. So we're off to lesson 3. And let's see what that's all about. Lesson completed. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this lesson on the NIST Cybersecurity Framework business environment. And please join me for the next lesson. Thank you.